Titus explains right away, oh, this is Rikku.
She helped me.
Well, first he's like, she's an He like almost blurts it out.
Yeah. How Waka does not pick up on this is beyond me.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Kason.
We left off right as at the end of Operation Mihen. We are going to be proceeding forth to the Djose Temple. But there's a quick scene.
Yes.
With Kimari.
With Kimari. He's tells us to smile, something like that. I actually can't remember exactly how the scene goes, but my note is with the text where he says, hey, you know, the journey's rough, but try to smile. And Titus says, don't worry, be happy, right? Which is don't worry, be happy, like, which is the quote.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so, like, Kimari's telling him not to worry so much or not to, like, show concern or frown because it's going to bother Yuna. And they need to put
that's it.
on...
Yeah, that's it.
You know, they need to be encouraging and hopeful and smile, and so that she doesn't have to have so much.
Even if it's fake, you know, just put the face on.
Right.
And so, but the text there, it wasn't "Don't worry, be happy" in the Japanese. It's instead of worrying, smile.
Yes.
Right. But I like the English kind of using a song that everyone knows here in America.
Right.
But then he asks Kimari to smile. He's like, I never see you smile. And he does the funniest smile. It's so funny. This whole scene plays out very similar to Kingdom Hearts, though.
Oh, sure.
The very beginning, once you get to Traverse Town, and Goofy and Donald tell Sora that their spaceship runs on smiles or on laughs, something like that. And so he's got to pretend to be happy. But it's a direct callback to this moment here.
That's really freaking funny.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Yeah, and I like how Titus says, sad. He's just like, it's like, oh, that's like the sad dude. He doesn't like smile or laugh about it or try to laugh it off. He's just like it's a pathetic smile, dude.
Kimari's trying.
You know, another thing I kind of liked about this scene, though, is this is the first time Kimari actually speaks in the game. And while we have seen other Ronso talk before this, it's the first time Kimari himself has actually spoken. And Titus is really surprised by that at first. He kind of like his face, you know, lights up and his jaw kind of drops for a second. And you almost expect this to be like, oh, like make a big deal about, holy crap, you talked. What? You actually talked? That's kind of like the tropey thing you would expect to happen. I like that that's not what they did. He just was like initially surprised, and then he just like is actually concerned about what he's telling him about Yuna, right? And he just talks to him like normal. And I feel like that, you know, not putting that sort of like teasing or like maybe social pressure, that might not be the right term for it, on Kimari for having spoken, which would make him be like less inclined to speak again.
Yes.
Titus just like, you know, talks to him like normal, treats him like normal, and the conversation just kind of proceeds. I just kind of like how that was
nice.
That was handled. So it was a really nice little scene there. You keep proceeding down the road. You kind of come to a branching path. Going to the left would take you towards the Moonflow and then Guadosalam. The right heads off to Djose Temple, and so they kind of stop there. And I like how Titus is asking, like, how much further till we get to Zanarkand, right? And so they're explaining to him, oh, you know, we got to go through the Moonflow and Guadosalam and the Thunder Plains beyond that and this. And then, you know, Zanarkand's at the end of all that. He asks whether they can just skip all of that. You know, like, there's the question of, like, maybe taking an airship or some faster way to get there. But they emphasize here, right, Yuna explaining, I have to pray to the faith in every temple in order to earn the final Aeon.
Right, you have to get everything, and then...
Right, each temple has to be visited, and you have to, you know, make a supplication to the faith of that temple, receive their blessing, and then move to the next one in order for the final Aeon to be unlocked, right?
Right.
So Waka says that's the summoner's training. She's got to prepare the mind and body, all just to get ready for the final summoning. So that's the reason why they can't just, like, push ahead to Zanarkand. They have to stop at every single one of these temples.
Okay, gotcha.
As they kind of walk off towards the temple, Auron reminds Titus that he should not tell Yuna that Sin's Jecht.
Yes, specifically. Yeah, don't tell Yuna. Yep.
Yep, because he feels like if he were to do that, she would withdraw from Titus, and he doesn't want that to happen. Because he wants to go with them, and he wants Titus to be with them as they go there. This is all part of his plan with Jecht and everything, right? So he says, well, what about my feelings? Like, why did you have to tell me? He's like, I didn't want you to like become emotionally compromised if you were to learn like in a late stage. You needed
some
to
other
know
point.
earlier.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
He's like, what are you talking about, me? He's like, I heard you were quite the crybaby, right?
Yeah.
And I like the way Titus responds to that. It's an internal monologue, his thoughts, and he's like, maybe when I was a kid, well, maybe a little bit now, just a little. So
Like he's admitting it just a touch.
Yeah, he's still pretty sensitive guy. So, okay. Outside of Djose Temple, I really like how it's kind of like all.
It's encased in rock.
And then like when a summoner is praying to the faith, it like these like electric fields sort of like hover the rocks around it.
Yeah, it's so cool. I loved it. I thought that was really cool.
Titus does too. He's just like, whoa, awesome, right? It's pretty like awe-inspiring sort of thing to see.
Yeah.
But whoever ended up surviving that battle with Sin, whether it's Luzu or Gata, you'll find them outside the temple here, and you can talk to them one last time. They'll both go back to Bhed either way, and that's kind of the end of them for the rest of the game. But if it's Gata, he's just like really unhinged from having seen his first battle and all the carnage. And he says that Luzu was like basically cut in half on this battlefield, which is just like holy fetch, right? If it's Luzu who survives, he gets pissed that Gata died, and he's like punching the wall. He's like, you don't understand, you don't understand. He's saying this to Waka, right? Which is just like, yes, I do. Of course I do.
Right.
You're the one who like took my brother. And,
exactly.
Anyway, so that's kind of the end of the two of them, which is, I think it's fine, but maybe like a little disappointing that they didn't utilize these characters a little more.
Like further on.
In some way later in the game. But because I really liked them. I really like these characters. But at the same time, it really does emphasize sort of the trauma and the hopelessness of this fight against Sin, right? It's like people die. It's horrible and traumatic every time it happens. It's like basically hopeless to try and fight this thing. And I think losing one of these characters is a good way to emphasize that, and the fact that it affects the others so much, and that they basically quit and go back to Bhed in order to like try to recover.
Yeah.
Right? Shows just how much this world is affected by sin in a pretty effective way.
Yeah, and honestly, like, what else is there to do? Like, once you lose that badly and something that bad happens, and you just feel hopeless, you just have to go back. You have to go home. There's nothing else to do.
Yep.
Is there a point here? And I can't remember. I should have written down specifically when this happened, but I did not. Yuna says something about, oh, she'll be fine as long as we're with her, right? And it's a point, like, as we're going towards the temple, where she says, I'll be fine as long as you're here.
Yeah, so Titus. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she says that to him.
She says that to him. But the Japanese is not to him directly. It's everybody. I'll be fine as long as everybody's here.
Oh,
right?
I see.
In
is
the
that
English version.
One of those things where it's like des, where it's like...
No, she says minna specifically. Minna
okay.
meaning everybody.
Okay.
It's a specific, And it's funny because in the English version of this game, it's a lot more romantic than the Japanese version.
Sure.
The Japanese is a lot more general. It's less romantic, and it's more. It's less just about the two of them and more about everybody. Whereas the English version, there's a lot of moments where it's like, oh, you're here, so I'm okay. It's like, no, everyone's here, so I'm okay. And that's her. That's Yuna's kind of thing.
Interesting difference. Yeah, I think I appreciate the English better there.
I think so too, as far as the romance goes. But in terms of the whole, in terms of where Yuna's thinking, because she's not so much into the romance thing in general. She's got a bigger job to do, and so she's kind of seeing the big picture a little bit more. So from Titus' perspective, I do like that in the English, but from Yuna's perspective, I think the Japanese makes more sense. So either way.
Inside, there's going to be a lot to break down here, I'm sure.
Yes,
but let's just talk real quickly about Isaru.
Well, first off, there's another summoner there.
Yes, Isaru.
And this summoner was not a jerk to us, so that was pretty refreshing.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Yeah. He's got like his
little brothers.
Yeah,
as
little
his
brother.
guardians.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Passe and Maroda.
Yeah. The salute we do is different than any salute you see in the entire game.
Oh, do they not do this?
She does this triangle symbol.
I didn't pick up on
I
that.
looked up to see if there was some Buddhist, Hindu, or some type of meaning behind that, and I didn't really find anything there. So later on in this conversation, they do the Yevon salute, but before that, she holds her hands in a triangle, and I don't know why. I've never seen it anywhere else in this whole game. That was the only point. So that was kind of weird. If anyone knows anything about that, let me know. As
a quick interjection, somebody on the last video was asking about your pronunciation of Yevon and why you say it as Yevon. Is there
There is a reason. Okay, I actually have notes here. I've copied and pasted this note forward from like 4 episodes because I'm like, oh, I forgot to talk about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to talk about that. So here it is. In Japanese, they say ebon. Ebon. E-B-O-N is how it's pronounced in Japanese. Ebon. Ebonin, or ebon. So there's a reason for this. The word evon comes from, and so it should be pronounced Evon. It was pronounced Yevon with the Y. I don't know exactly why, other than the Yehovah, whatever. But anyways, so the word Yevon, I believe, comes from the word Evam, A-E-V-U-M, Evam, which is an old religious word, right? So in Japanese, it's Ebon. And Evan, Evam, A-E-V-U-M, is a temporal mode of existence experienced by angels and the saints in heaven. The word Evam is Latin, and it originally meant like an age or an aeon, right?
Oh, okay.
But Thomas Aquinas identifies the Evam as the measure of existence of being that, of beings, plural, that, and this is going to be a technical, but I'll explain it in a minute. The measure of the existence of beings that recede less from the permanence of being, for as much as their being neither consists in change nor is the subject of change. Nevertheless, they have change annexed to them, either actually or potentially. As example, he cites the heavenly bodies, right? So you look at the stars, right? And it's like, hey, are the stars immortal? Yes. Are they unchanging? Sort of. They move in the sky. They move. They're subject to the influences of change, but they themselves do not change, right? And so that's the idea of the Evam, right? And
stars aren't immortal, are they?
We're not talking about science. We're talking about Thomas Aquinas.
So the
was
idea
about 1,000 years ago.
You look up at the stars at night; they're always there.
Yes,
kind of a thing.
I should have prefaced. Saint Thomas Aquinas, for all those who don't know, lived about 1,000 years ago.
Okay, makes a lot more sense.
It's a different kind of thing here. This is an old religious idea, specific to Catholicism, and probably Eastern Orthodoxy as well. So then there's another word that comes from Evam, which is eviternity, and that is the proper sphere of every created spirit, and therefore the human soul. So the soul is ev-eternal. It's not eternal necessarily, but it's ev-eternal, right? It's the essence of God, but still subject to some changes of other forces of nature, right? So at death, the body's distracting relationship to matter's time ceases to affect the soul so that it can experience its proper ev-eternity, which is how the saints are and all that stuff. You go to heaven and it's almost like a loss of free will, but still an ability to do things and to be affected, but to only be aligned with the will of God, which means essentially you've given up the will, right? So you don't do things of yourself. You're just subject to the forces of nature, but you're immortal.
Gotcha.
It's interesting. It's an interesting idea, but I believe that's where the word Evon comes from, right? And so there's 2 reasons why I pronounce it that way. And often, because you'll probably notice as well that Mike says Titus, I tend to say Titus.
Yeah.
In the Japanese, it's Tida is the name. Right. Now you don't really hear that, but that's what I was. That's the way it's like written out and stuff with the character as he's saying stuff.
We talked about that a little bit in the first episode.
Yes, and so there are certain names that I hear, and like Rikku is Ryuku. I might call her Ryuku. Maybe I'll still call her Rikku. I don't know, but I'm hearing the Japanese, and then I come to this podcast, and I'm trying to like remember. Wait, what's the English word for that? So I will probably still keep calling it Yevon, which is actually a mix between. The Japanese and the English. Yeah, it's
regarding pronunciation of the main character, there was somebody I know some guy was all frustrated, like, how can you be mispronouncing the name of the main character on purpose? Why? I didn't. I named my character Titus.
Oh, there you go. You can name your own character.
I named him Titus.
Done. No more argument.
The
It's
name
over.
of my character is Titus, because I named him Titus.
There you go. There you go.
There you go. That's why I called him Titus.
No, it happens to be spelled the same as
It's
Titus,
spelled the same, but it's pronounced Titus.
But
It's kind of like
Titus.
So when we were growing up,
Yes,
Kaysen,
we'll mix them in love.
just tell them the story.
LMXMNLOV. Oh, that was Harvest Moon 64, I think, when I came up with that,
came up
right?
with a random name or
Yeah, I
something?
was just, because we were naming your chickens, right? And I was
Oh,
like,
right.
all right, what's this chicken's name? And it had like Chud and like all these funny little names,
Yeah.
right? And then one of them, I was like, I didn't know what to write. And so I wrote down LMXMNLOV. But there was this funny idea in my mind that was you can name your kid whatever you want, but you can spell it however you want
Yes,
too, right?
yes.
So you could theoretically have a name like LMXMNLOV that was pronounced Carl. but it's spelled LMXMNLOV. And the Carl came from the Karl Malone poster that was in my room. Anyways, so Miximilov, right?
Pronounced Carl.
It's just pronounced Carl. And so with this funny joke was like, oh, well, my kid's going to be so funny. He'll be named Miximilov. And then the teacher will try to pronounce it in reading the attendance sheet in class. And we'll say, oh, Miximilov. And the kid will say, my name's Carl. And the teacher will be like, shut up, Carl. I'm not talking to you. Where's Miximilov? Oh, man. It was going to be so great.
Did
But
you ever bring that up to Breezy?
I don't think so.
You should have done it.
She knows very little about my past. I should do that now, though. Oh, it's just great.
You
It's
need
just so
one
funny.
more kid.
No, I
One
know.
more
I have
kid, Carl.
and I'm gonna have another kid, but it'll be rough, trying to convince my wife to name him Carl.
Anyways, yeah. So that's why this is the thing from for those of you who don't know, we met in Arizona
Oh,
in like 1999 is when we
99.
moved there.
Yeah.
We grew up through high school. and things
23.
like that.
Wait, 23 years.
Yeah, fetching a long time ago, dude.
That's wild.
We've known each other longer now than
Like
we were alive at the time,
Yes.
which is crazy.
Almost double that.
I know.
That's unbelievable.
All right, tangent over.
All right.
Yeah. So, Isaru, the summoner here, and his brothers, right? They try to warn Titus here
Oh, yeah.
before going in.
That's
hey, be on the lookout. A lot of summoners are disappearing, and this could be fiends, but not so many and so quick. Like something is afoot. Like watch your back. kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? Which we'll get to in a minute. It's the Bhed doing it, but
Yes.
anyways, that's where they first sort of introduced this idea, like, be careful, like, summoners are disappearing like crazy. Okay, now, that's the end of those guys. We'll hear more about them later, I think. I was starting to look at the mandala in the Djose Temple. This is the first time I really paid attention to it.
Good. I hope everyone did.
Or really paid attention much to the details of the temple itself.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think is in each temple, if I'm not mistaken, is the statue of the
Yes.
woman and the man.
Yeah, the
right?
woman and the man.
The woman there is Unaleska,
Yes.
who now we've had Seymour talk about a little bit in that last scene at the end of the Operation Mihen scene.
Yeah.
He's trying to comfort Una and
we
saying,
find out more about her soon.
yeah. He's trying to comfort her and saying, like, let me be your pillar of strength. I think he
Yes.
says, as Unaleska had her Lord Zaun.
Zaum, yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, that's what those two statues are. It's Unaleska and Zaun.
And I love like just looking at them. It's really masterful. It's really cool the way they did this because
Right.
it's not just two people. Like they represent things.
Yeah.
And like just the fact that she is so naturally clothed in her birthday suit, and he is so head to toe, completely armor, clothes, capes, helmets, everything, flowing garments. Like he is so clearly like weighed upon by the culture and by material and by all of this stuff. And she is free of all of that with her own separate constraints. But then they come together as this meeting of like culture and nature. And it's just, it's beautiful. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, like you were saying, we're going to learn more about Unaleska pretty soon, but
Yeah.
For now, she's the first summoner who defeated Sin.
Yes.
The very first one.
So that's why she gets the big statues.
Yeah.
And everyone else gets the little statues.
Right. So those little statues that you see in the temples, those are other summoners who have defeated Sin in the past, I believe.
Yeah.
So like Braska is at
The
Braska
ones
statue.
up front. Yeah.
Yeah. The ones
Now,
in the front.
I saw a theory that because there are other, what would you call them, other statues around.
Yes.
But then the ones up front have names, the other ones don't.
Yes.
And that the idea behind that is that the other statues are the summoners who died along the pilgrimage, who didn't quite make it.
Who didn't defeat
Yeah,
Sin.
but they still get a reverence because people are still revering those statues as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are they doing? Those statues all look the same. It's almost like the idea of the faceless hero, or the what is it in Washington D.C.? There's the monument to the unknown soldier, is what they call it, and it's just there's a statue of a generic soldier, but it represents all of the soldiers who died, without being named and without their bodies being recovered.
Right.
And so you see all these statues around. Now, I don't know if this is totally canon, but someone brought that up, and I thought that was a pretty good explanation for what that means.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool. I would buy that, definitely. So yeah, that's what that's why, like you're saying, Unalesca and Zayon, the big, most featured ones.
Then Braska
and the other summoners who have defeated Sin. So there's not that many who have actually done it.
It's very few.
We talked about that a little bit last week. I can't remember if it was in spoilers or not, but
because the idea was how long is a calm, and have they been defeating it over and over this whole time, or has it really been many times, and only a few calms have ever actually happened?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what that is. And then the mandala in the center here is pretty interesting. It's got like 3 circles. There's like an outer, a middle, and an inner one. And the one in the inner looked a little bit like, to me, like sun rays, or maybe like an eye at the center of that, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then in the middle circle was a lot of this electrical sort of energy.
Yeah, kind of like sort of fire, but also just chaotic waves, kind of. Right?
It reminded me of electricity because this temple has so much. And then on the outer are this little symbol that has, they're all pointing in towards the center.
Yep.
Kind of like the first one at Bhed.
Yeah.
You know, these symbols that are pointing in towards the center, but they look a little bit like maybe a leaf or something.
A leaf.
It's like a straight line with these sort of lines coming off of it on either side like this.
But that allow it to come to a point,
Yeah.
So maybe a tree, a leaf, or a feather, or something like that.
Something resembling that, right?
Yeah.
Kind of pointing in towards the center of the...
And there's a bunch of them. I think there's 32. I may have done the math wrong, but
Yeah.
there's about that many.
Yeah, they
and
go
they're all pointing in.
all the way around the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one has the symmetry that the previous one didn't have.
Yeah.
Because of this, the letter at the center. And so it's symmetrical, but still chaotic. You know, there's a lot going on here, but at the same time, it's a lot of stuff that's difficult to interpret, because when you have the pure chaotic forces of nature that is pointing towards and emanating from, because you've got the leaves that are pointing in, but then you have the energy that's emanating out from that center point, which is the light, which is also the electricity, which we're going to learn a lot of soon, right? But you see that the forces kind of meet at a certain point, but it's all more or less chaotic energy, which is difficult to read because when you need some squares or some other shapes that make sense, maybe like a cross or things, other items will help you make sense of this, but this has very few of those things. It's mostly just the energy of heaven, it seems, because the circles tend to represent heaven. Yeah.
So we're going to go into more detail on that in the spoiler section at the end.
Okay, because there's also those 2 rooms on the side.
Yes.
And this is the cool part. The 2 rooms on the side, you go into the rooms and you see the electricity and where it's coming from.
Yeah.
It's attached to a root system.
Yes.
Looks like roots.
Yes.
That look very similar to the tree in the dream that we had just in last episode.
When Titus goes swimming after Sin.
Yes.
In the first part, he sees spirits kind of walking around these bluish trees.
Yep, those trees.
Yeah.
And the roots are exposed and they look like where the sources of the electricity come from.
Yes.
And we'll talk about what that means, as Mike said, in the spoiler section at the end.
Yeah.
But for the time being, just understand there's a connection between the blue light stuff, the electricity, and then the roots of the tree in the dream.
Yep. Okay, so at this point you go through the Cloister's trials.
Oh, real quick though, the summoner that we meet, he says something. He says, "Don't worry, I have no intention of losing either."
Oh, right.
Meaning, like, hey, we're both on each other's side because we're residents of Spira, but I'm going to be the one to defeat sin, not you, right?
Yes.
But they're being cordial and nice about it. But it's fascinating because even in a kind interaction between two summoners where they're friendly towards each other, there's still the element of a competition between the two of them. This is huge for the theme of the game. Absolutely huge. And yes, it all goes back to the mandala in Bhed, in that temple. But it's like if you aren't the one to defeat sin, you lose, right? So like a playoff tournament, there's lots of competitors, but there's only one winner, right? So it's not like a game and a bunch of games and half won, half lost. It's like, no, everyone loses except one in terms of being the one to defeat sin, and whatever that means. They probably lived their whole life just knowing that I want to be the one to defeat sin.
Right.
But it's like a game, a little bit.
Okay. Yep. We'll come back to that one for sure.
Okay.
Okay. So once you get through the cloister here, one thing I took a note on here. Tidus is a guardian now, so he's just allowed to go in with them. But there was never any sort of
when did we miss
official
something?
initiation or ceremony or like ordination or
I thought about that.
anything. They're just like, you get to be a guardian
You
now.
weren't a guardian then, you are now.
So it confused me a little bit because it's like, Donna's plan back in Kilika to like get Yuna in trouble was to like force Tidus into the cloister after her. But it's like they could just claim he was a guardian.
Yes.
There's no like record
And who would know
of
exactly?
the church that says like, oh, Yuna has this, and this guardian, and
Right.
we've ordained that or whatever. So like, what was the big deal?
Yeah,
It's
the
kind of just
authority
you just claim anybody as a guardian whenever you
so
want.
even if Yuna got caught and got in trouble, she'd have been like, oh, he's my guardian. And like, who's to say he's not?
Right. Because there's there's nothing official about this, as far as I know. Maybe somebody else knows, but like I thought that was kind of funny. It was just like they just let him come in, and he's just a guardian now. Okay, maybe it has something to do with Aaron. I don't know, like Aaron being there, but it doesn't seem to me that there's any like real process to this.
I would say we probably missed something. You know how you mentioned, along with Lulu changing maybe her tune towards Tidus a little bit. This could have been a scene or a brief moment that happened in between, maybe at the end of at the Luca tournament, where it's like, okay, we now perform the authority, and in the presence of these witnesses, now write it down on the records, and he is a guardian. I don't know if that's how this works. I don't know how any of the Avon religion works, really. Yeah. I know very little about it, but it would seem like something like that would need to happen, and that would be a good point. Yeah. So I almost wonder if something like that got cut.
Maybe. I don't know.
But I love how Donna's guardian freaking loves Aaron so much.
I wrote this down too. This is fantastic.
It's just so funny. I love it.
Because she comes in being, herself.
Yes.
Like,
and she even goes to him. She's like, who are you?
Yeah.
Get this
she
guy
doesn't
out
recognize
of here.
who Aaron is. That's important.
Which is
she does not recognize Aaron.
Yes.
Who is this? Do you know this riffraff, Partello, or something like that?
So she must not be as well read as she presents herself. Yes. She must not be as in the world and as knowledgeable as she seems to,
Well, this is
pretend.
Along those lines, this is another thing I was thinking about, because all the summoners we've seen so far, Yuna, Belgamine, Isaru, they have like a ton of robes and stuff on.
Yes.
Like very ceremonial looking.
Yes.
Like
very
robes.
Formal. Yes.
Donna's the only one who doesn't.
Yes.
Literally the only one.
That's true.
And I was sitting there thinking,
similarly, Seymour is the only of the Maesters who also shows,
Yeah. So I'm thinking about this. It's like, was this just, a sexy character designed for the sake of it? Or is it that Donna isn't really...
It might be saying
she's
something
not
about her
really a very devout or very devoted summoner necessarily.
Like she cares about other things maybe a
Yeah.
little bit more than what she's
Right.
doing there. I mean, that would be fair enough. I would. It seems to be true to her character, and given the character design, I mean, as we mentioned 5 times now, Nomura said it all meant something.
Yes.
All the characters.
So
and so, what does her design mean? It means
Yeah.
something. We have it from the artist. It means
Yeah.
something. So I think that's a fair enough interpretation. I
Yeah.
think it's good.
She's probably the fact that she doesn't recognize Orin means that
Yeah.
she must not be a very good or at least studious summoner.
Yeah.
Like not that it's not that important to her to understand the purpose of what she's doing.
Right.
and
She's
the
just going
history
through
of
the
what she's doing.
motions
She's doing
to
it
win, right?
to win
To win the
and
game.
to become famous or to
Sure.
have status or something like that. More about the appearances than
Yeah.
anything else.
She's also a bit antisocial, so I mean that would make sense if maybe she's like more of a narcissistic personality
Yeah.
and that she only cares about certain things
Yeah.
and less about,
Yeah.
companionship or friends or anything like that.
Right. So she doesn't recognize
Nope.
him, and
But he does.
he does, and
The
he's
Guardian.
like, "Can
He's so
I
funny,
shake
man.
your hand?"
Oh, it's so
This is the
funny.
first
And
time he's
the way he's
spoken
like
to.
posing when he meets with him, he's like, oh, I looked up to you when I was a kid. Oh, please.
You're the reason
And-
I became a guardian.
Yes, and what's so funny, I was worried for a moment because don't make needless enemies. Don't
Yeah.
be so careless to make an enemy out of someone who wants to be your friend,
Yeah,
right?
right.
I was thinking Auron was gonna be like, I'm not touching you.
Yeah.
And I really thought he would do that. And I was
Mm.
so pleased that Auron just graciously shakes his hand and bows and he entertains him for
Yeah.
just a moment, you know? I thought that was so good. I thought it was great, and Auron is a tactful person because he probably doesn't care at all about this guy. He
Yeah.
really would probably rather not even be talked to by anyone.
Yeah.
But he's willing to entertain somebody who otherwise could become an enemy. Kind of like in The Incredibles, how there's
Yeah.
that guy who really liked Mr. Incredible, but then he's like, go away, and so he becomes a supervillain
Yes,
because
right.
Mr. Incredible was a little too mean to him, you know?
Yes, right.
So I felt like that was going to happen, and it didn't, and I was like, yes, thank you. Thank you, Auron.
Yeah, it was nice. And then, of course, Waka and Lulu sort of like attack.
They
They team up to kind
They're
of
like,
like
wow,
a
you
team
didn't know
attack
the
on-
great Auron?
on Donna there, yeah. Calling the personal guardian of Lord Braska riffraff, and then Lulu says, "And you call yourself a summoner."
Oh, so good. So good.
But
Yeah.
Donna kind of turns this fact around on Yuna as well when she emerges. First, if you go talk to Bartello, he talks about, "I swear I'll never wash this hand again."
Yeah.
But when Yuna does eventually come back out, Donna turns this fact on her as well. It's like, oh, now you have Auron as your personal guardian. All
Wow.
these guardians.
Are you overcompensating for something?
Yeah, and like,
you must not be very confident.
The daughter of Braska, you know, like you
Yeah.
even have like Seymour looking at you now, and
That's not her
like,
fault.
how
but
about you
yeah.
stand on your own 2 feet for once instead of like relying on the fame of
All
your
these
father for all
crutches.
these favors that you get, and
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing.
She also says, and this was very poignant. She says, "Your guardians won't be able to protect you when the time comes."
Yeah,
And that was kind of how she ends.
Her
And it's
last
like,
thing.
first off, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But second off, like, dang, like Yuna she's gathering all these people to her. Yet there's this idea that at some point, just like Frodo with the Fellowship, you know, it's like, yeah, you got we got the king of Gondor and the wizard and the son of Thranduil, the elf, and but really, you're actually going to leave all of them and go on your own.
Yeah.
And that was always the point. The plan from the beginning was that Frodo has to do this alone.
Right.
And that's what Galadriel kind of
yeah,
shows him. And it's like, this story kind of has a similar feel to that. Yuna's just got all these powerful, powerful people, but there's something about it that's like at some point she's got a thing to do that only she can do.
yeah.
And they can only help her so much. And Donna just kind of like
Emphasizes
hammers the
that.
nail into her heart right there. Just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, good stuff. The next day, Yuna is kind of sleeping in a little bit. When you go into the temple, into the room where she's at, the lady standing next to her says it's because she stayed up all night doing sendings.
Yes, yeah.
So she was up
Because
like,
of the Mihen massacre, right?
yes,
So she was like, sending all the crusaders.
basically working tirelessly all night on that.
Yeah.
So she's sleeping in a little bit, and when she realizes what time it is, because Titus goes in there to wake her up,
Yeah.
she's like,
This room, by the
freaking
way,
out.
has that the symbol,
Yeah.
with the roots and the electricity.
yeah. And so she's freaking out, like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll get ready right away.
Yeah.
And she sort of rushes out. And I mean, they don't represent this because it's PS2 graphics, but she's got bed hair.
She has bed head, yeah.
Right. And so she keeps apologizing and apologizing and apologizing. I'm so sorry, And so they kind of tease her about it a little bit, right? Like, and everyone's kind of laughing about it. And Titus is as well. He's laughing. But he says, I hadn't really laughed like that in a long time. It was only later that I realized I was the only one really laughing then. Or the only one really laughing then was me. Laughing must have been the only thing keeping them going. So they're trying to, kind of like you were saying with Kimahri a little earlier, like manufacture lighthearted moments, knowing where this is going. Because this is like, I don't know, the 4th or 5th time now that they've foreshadowed this idea that they still haven't like completely explained yet.
Yes.
Everybody knows where they're going, and except Titus. So he's genuinely laughing at the teasing stuff, but they're all just kind of trying to manufacture a lighthearted moment, is kind of like the idea behind this.
Mm-hmm. Make fun of the previous laughing scene all you want. It was very important to the story.
Yeah,
that was my writing here.
Right.
Because that is, like, this is an example of that. Like a perfect example of like what Yuna wants and why, and how everyone has been trained to laugh the way that Titus was trained to laugh.
Yes, exactly. And that's kind of like the main point of it, right? Is that they are, as Yuna was trying to get us to do in the laughing scene, they are putting on a face and filling the journey with laughter because they understand where they're going. And they need to be able to have those moments along the way to keep them from dwelling on that too much.
And the only one that doesn't get it is the fool.
Yeah, he's the only one. Okay, next scene is at the Moonflow.
Yeah.
So you're going to go back to that sort of fork in the road, head left instead of right this time. Continue forward. The Moonflow is kind of interesting. Actually before that.
Oh, my next note is the Moonflow, so.
The Ronzo were on the path.
Oh, yeah.
Along the way.
And they give us another warning.
Yeah.
Hey, summoners are kidnapped. So that's twice now we've gotten that warning. It was interesting that they came to warn Kimahri, not just to make fun of him.
Not just to make fun of him.
Even though they weren't
do that
making
anyway,
fun of him. And Kimahri's just like, you came all the way here to make fun of me? And they're like, no, we came here to warn you.
Summoners are
Look
disappearing.
Out. Also, you're little and stupid. And then they leave. Their culture's funny, man.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like, that is a funny thing. It's like, they're still going to mock him, but they feel obligated to let him know about a problem coming up.
For whatever
so they
reason.
are helping with the same hand at which they're like backhanding
Yes,
him.
it's a backhanded assistance.
So, but
right.
this is the second time now that they've emphasized that summoners are disappearing.
Yeah.
Like, watch out, right? So they're setting something up here. So anyways, that was one scene that happens along that path before you get to the Moonflow. Then you get to the Moonflow, and this is where they begin to tell you a little bit about fireflies for the first time. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, they're like come from the flowers, it looks like.
Yes.
It looks like they're being produced by nature
Kind of
through the water,
floating up.
and the flower is the medium that pulls them up and puts them in the sky,
Yeah, I don't know if
that was
they've
cool.
even said the word firefly in the game yet before this. I can't remember.
I feel like they did maybe once, but I don't remember either.
But this is the first time they really talk about them at all.
Yeah.
So the quote here, they say that clouds of fireflies gather here when night falls, right? So into this Moonflow, this area they're in. The entire river glows like a sea of stars. And then Titus starts getting an idea.
I know, and
hey,
Oren,
I got an idea, and Oren just immediately, we're not waiting till
we're not
nightfall.
staying here. But Titus is along the same lines as the player, which is like you're seeing something that's pretty cool, and then Lulu tells you how actually really cool it is.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I want to see that.
Yeah.
And then immediately it's like, no, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't look at that right now. We've got something else to do. And I love that too. And then Titus is like thinking and thinking. It's just so funny.
And of course, his response again. This is, I think, the third time this has happened now.
Yeah, he's like,
then once we beat Sin, we're coming back.
Once we beat Sin, we'll
just come back and look at it on the way back.
Exactly.
Right? And everyone is silent at that comment.
No one says a word.
They don't say a word.
No.
They're all just totally quiet. More of the same foreshadowing we've been getting a lot up to this point.
A lot. It's beautiful though.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing how much more beautiful it can get.
Yeah. Then you get to an animal. You see an animal called the Shoopuf.
The Shoopuf.
An elephant, but they call it a Shoopuf.
It's hard to explain. It just looks like the gentlest little large giant, you know?
And it's kind of walking, and Titus is just like, whoa.
Yeah,
and walking,
never seen that
explains
before.
that it's a Shoopuf and that they can ride on it across the river.
Yeah.
And there's like, oh man, let's do that, right?
They call it a Shoopufu. So in Japanese, I can give you guys a little insight as to why it's called a Shoopuf, because that's kind of funny, you know? So in Japanese, the word for departure is shupatsu, to leave, to depart, right? Shupatsu. And or shupatsu suru means like to depart, right? So in Japanese, a Shoopuf is called a Shoopufu. Shoopufu as opposed to Shupatsu, right? So the name means transportation, right? So you would depart on a Shoopuf. That is to say, you would Shupatsu on a Shoopufu. And they make that play on words. They make that little pun several times in Japanese as it goes.
Oh, wow.
Shoopufu, Shupatsu. It's really funny. It's really good.
That's
that
great.
little alien dude that's like driving it, you know?
Yeah, what are those guys called?
I
Called the...
can't remember.
Oh man, I knew this. Just
All I
like...
know is they're not represented among the maesters of Yevon.
Hold on, I'm going to find this right now. Hypelos, that's what they're called.
Oh.
Hypelo. That's the name of that
remember.
little blue race of dudes that
Okay.
drive the Shoopufs. Hypelos. What's really interesting is that the Hypelos seem to be the only race not represented in the Blitzball tournament.
So they're not in Yevon or Blitzball.
Yeah, they have like a Guado team. They have like a Ronso team.
Yeah, the Ronso.
And they have an Bhed team.
I know.
But
It's funny they let them compete.
They don't have a Hypelo Blitzball team.
I wonder how many Hypelos there are.
They don't give a fetch about Blitzball. But they look like aquatic creatures, which is kind of funny.
Oh, this does remind me though. I should bring this up now. There was a comment on the last episode talking about the temple before Djose, the temple at Kilika, and why the Blitzball players were there.
Oh, yes.
So
right.
the summoner of the Kilika temple, a previous summoner, was it one who defeated Sin? Or was
Yes,
it, okay.
one of the ones who...
A previous summoner who had defeated Sin.
Ohala, I think his name was.
Was a great Blitzball player.
Yeah.
And Kilika being, because there's no temple in Luka.
Yeah.
So the closest temple to Luka is Kilika.
I'm really confused
The temple
about.
is the Blitzball arena.
Why is there not a temple in Luka?
Luka is the most important place, you would think.
Except for maybe the capital city where like or Micah is.
Yeah,
But Luka would be certainly like the second largest city.
Yes, yes.
Why is there no temple there?
The temples were built long ago, and that's a good question.
So I don't know that. So now we have another thing someone who's going to explain to us.
Yes, somebody please explain. Then we'll bring it up next episode.
But the fact that there isn't one there makes sense that the Blitzball players go to Kilika, the closest temple there is.
Not only the closest, but the one that represents the place where the summoner who defeated Sin was from. He was from that place. And
from
he
Kilika.
was a great Blitzball player.
Ohala, I think his name is. He was from Kilika. He was a summoner from Kilika, and he was a Blitzball player.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's why those three players were there.
Right. Okay, now, the cool thing about this Shoopuf that you see, it's got a giant, like,
huge
scar on its back leg.
Yep.
And this really plays into, actually, one of my favorite moments of this entire sort of stretch of the game we played, which I had not remembered. I don't know if I just had not talked to Aaron at this point in the game before, or just get past it, but it's really good.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Someone in the comments had a different reaction to it, though, because they put a spoiler in the last episode, and it was different from the way I thought that I would take it. So I'm interested to hear how you think this scene plays out, and then I'll tell you the opposite position.
Yeah, so Aaron tells Titus a story about Jecht, that Jecht was drunk,
yes,
as he was wont to do at that time, and he thought that the Shoopuf was a fiend.
Yeah, just like Titus, he'd never seen one before.
Yeah,
so he was just like, what?
His very first time ever seeing this animal, oh, it's a giant fiend, and he ran up and attacked it and cut its leg. And of course, it's a service animal,
Yes,
and it
harmless.
belongs to a business, right? So Braska ended up giving all of the money they had away in order to try to apologize for this.
Right.
And Jecht was so embarrassed and so humiliated that he quit drinking forever.
He never drank again.
Now, this in light of the scene we saw just a little while ago,
The memory,
where Titus in Zanarkand had said, well, why don't you quit drinking now? And Jecht was not willing, for his son's sake, for his family's sake, for his career's sake, as a blitzball player, even though it was getting to be a problem.
Yeah.
He was not willing to quit drinking for his family, for his career, but he was willing to quit after humiliating himself here. I can only imagine how much more resentment that would build in Titus hearing that story.
Yes.
As Titus was trying to ask his father to stop drinking, he was like,
that's what did it.
It was cutting a Shoopuf and being embarrassed to have to give all their money away and letting down his comrades.
Right.
That got him to quit, but he wouldn't quit for his son.
Yeah.
Or his wife, or, you know. And I could imagine Titus just like fuming hearing that story. This is the kind of thing that makes him even more resentful and upset at Jecht.
Yeah.
And continues to build on that. So that's why I really liked it, because again, we're seeing a totally different view of Jecht from all these other people who knew him from Titus. But this is the first time where I feel like I can really see how that story would be justifiably interpreted in a way that makes Jecht look really bad.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it's like they're just kind of sharing this lighthearted nature, this loving, kind of kind person that he was. But there's not like a way, there's not like a context that we see that through Titus's perspective, in which, no, like you're seeing this all wrong kind of a thing, right? In the way that this one does. Because we got that little scene in Zanarkand between Jecht and Titus about quitting drinking, it's like I can now see how Oren saw it versus how Titus saw it, and I see them both as being completely valid.
Right, I know that's the hard part. That's the difficult part, is that both of them are valid in saying, oh, Jecht was good and oh, Jecht was bad. They're both right.
Yes.
And that's
that's
just confusing.
Yes.
That's difficult, but that's human, that's life.
And it's so human, and it's so relatable. And so I loved the scene for that reason, because it gives more justification to, because the whole time, you know, we're thinking, oh, maybe Titus has got it wrong. You know, like maybe Jecht really was a good guy, because we haven't seen necessarily the abusive father that he's portraying him to be. Yeah. He's kind of rough, and he's like, you can't do it, you know, kind of a thing, when he's trying to teach him the Jecht shot or whatever. But nothing like too bad. But being an alcoholic, like a drunk guy, you know, and not taking care of his family, now I'm starting to see what Titus sees, and the fact that he would quit for someone else and not for him.
Yeah, this is great, because your interpretation was the interpretation of the comment that I had read on last episode.
Oh, nice.
And my interpretation was different, and I might be the only one who saw it this way initially, where I was like, oh, isn't that nice? Jecht gave up drinking, which means Jecht is on a path to become the person that Titus always wanted him to become. And he was on that path of transformation, and that this journey turned him into the person Titus always wanted him to be. And that's why everyone liked him so much, because by the end, he was a good person. Now, hearing you and reading the previous comment, I understand maybe that may not have been intentional, that it was probably what you're saying. It was probably along the lines of something to make Titus even more upset. But I didn't actually read it that way at first. Well, I read it a slightly different way, a little more of a kind interpretation.
I honestly feel like it could be both. Like,
it could
both
be,
things can be true.
It's like, oh, my dad is, but why is he changed? Yeah, my dad changed to become a good person, but why did he do it for them and not for me?
It might have taken Jecht being transported into Spira, having his life turned upside down, and having an actual challenge again that gives his life purpose, that all of a sudden changes his perspective on his own weaknesses, and makes him, okay, I need to make some internal changes. But in a way that you don't get when you're at the top of the world in Zanarkand, you know, a star blitzball player, and it seems like it's harder at that stage to be introspective and
Yes.
to like look inside
Yeah.
than it is when you've been taken down to the bottom again.
Yeah.
So I feel like the process of coming into Spira and meeting Braska and probably revering him, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Braska probably did a
that's
lot to
probably
help
true.
change Jecht,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like change his perspective on things, and helped him along that path. So
Yeah.
it could very well be that this was
So he
one
had
moment
someone to look up to. He didn't have anyone to look up to in Xanarkand.
Right.
Yeah.
that along this journey he did become a better man.
Yeah.
And so that's what they saw of him in Spira, was the Jecht that was
Humbled.
kicked down to the bottom,
Forcibly humbled, yeah.
and became a better person because of it.
Yeah.
Not the guy at the top of the world who was a jerk to his son
Yeah.
and to everyone, really. He was kind of just a selfish guy in Xanarkand. So both things are probably true in this instance.
The one thing that's for sure is that, and hopefully Titus recognizes this himself, but Jecht could not stop drinking whenever he wanted to.
No.
He couldn't do it himself.
Yeah.
And so even though he said, I can do it myself, and Titus is like, you said you could do it yourself, but you wouldn't do it for me.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it himself.
Yeah.
That wasn't actually a possibility.
Right.
So it took something like this to change him. And my hope is that Titus recognizes that, despite what he said, he couldn't do it himself, and that would lend to a more merciful interpretation of this scene,
Yeah.
along the lines of what I had, as opposed to,
Like, I think the reality is
other.
Jecht really was on the path to becoming a better person, like
Yeah.
you're saying. Titus won't see it that way.
Right, no, you're right. Yeah, that's a fair point.
Because of his internal resentment, but he has
Yeah.
a justifiable reason to feel like
Exactly.
that. And that's what makes the whole,
Yeah.
that's what makes relationships messy and
Mm-hmm.
difficult is, a person can be this way and then they can change, but to the person who was wronged, it's very hard to let
yeah.
that go, right?
yeah.
Like there's a whole journey this person has to take inwardly to be able to forgive, right?
Yeah.
So it's just really, really well done. I really liked that little story from Aaron there.
Yeah, I loved it.
There's also a kind of a funny, story that Yuna and Kimari tell about her riding a Shoopuf and falling off into the water, and he was all concerned, and then she got back on and jumped on purpose like a bunch of times after that. Right.
What a kid.
As like she was probably 10 years old or something, but
My son Kai would do that.
yeah, and he was all worried,
What a
and she was
pain.
like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and he's like, "No, you had fun." Like,
Kimari's great, man.
Yeah.
I love him.
so that was a nice little thing, and again, it sort of reinforces how long Kimari's been.
Yeah,
Guarding
since she was
her.
so young.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a nice little story.
Yep.
Okay, now you get on the Shoopuf.
Yes, before you get on, you go and you kind of arrange the ride with the.
Oh, right.
You see the chocobo, the Crusaders.
Oh,
They're trying to ride across too, and it's
Yes.
like, no, the chocobo doesn't fit, and it's like, they have to find another way around, and it's going to take forever, but whatever. You know.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that was their last chocobo, though, right? So that
yes,
we can't
they only
abandon
have
it.
one more left. Yeah.
So we got to keep it. We'll find our own way, you know.
yeah.
But in the background of the scene, in the shop, there's a Triforce.
Yes.
Yeah,
I was
you
going
saw
to
that?
talk about this.
Okay.
It's the same symbol from one of the samurai clans
Yes,
of the feudal era,
the three
right?
dragon scales.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, cool. So you saw that too. This is a fun little thing. I call it a Triforce. It likely is not a reference to Zelda.
Yeah.
Just because the companies and all
Right.
that stuff. It is likely a reference to the three dragon scales. It's a story that's like 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
But that symbol, just so for people who don't know, the Triforce symbol was not created by Zelda,
Yeah.
by Miyamoto or
Yeah.
Nintendo. It was first, like carved out as an icon like 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was who was it?
I'm pretty sure it was the banner or the flag of
Mitsuroko.
one of
name.
the samurai clans.
One of the big families,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. And they, one of the leaders had this dream in which a dragon had come and visited him. Or I say a dream, I think it was a mythology. I think
Oh, sure.
They would say it actually happened. And then there were he left behind 3 dragon scales, and that was like a promise to the family of some good fortune. And
Yeah.
so on his gravestone, he had the 3 triangles put there. And then the whole family, it became a symbol for the whole family after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what it means. It's called the Mitsuroko, and Mitsu meaning 3 and Roko meaning scales. But it's the 3 dragon scales.
Good stuff.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Don't know how it relates to the game, but it's a sweet symbol.
It's sweet. It's just it's cool because it's a Zelda reference, but then it's even cooler because it's not a Zelda reference. So we kind of went full circle there.
One thing I forgot to say here.
Yeah.
You talk to Aaron again. This is kind of a thing. You got to talk to NPCs multiple times sometimes to get all the dialogue.
Yeah.
And this is something I've been talking about with Pat Holloman a little bit, but also with patrons about the development of Spira's civilizations and how believable it would be, how little or how much it has changed over 1,000 years in certain instances.
Okay,
and
whether it's believable or not.
Huge discussion around this.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really interesting because, about whether or not, how well thought through the question that's being posed in these conversations, how well thought through is the development and the world building of this really, But one thing that Aaron says, he comments on how little Spira has changed in 10 years. So he's been gone for 10 years, right. In Zanarkand. And now he's come back and he's like, this place has not changed in 10 years. And he says specifically, this place resists change.
You know what's interesting? Those last 10 years, that was the calm.
Yes.
So even during the calm, which they've only ever had a few times in forever, they still didn't really progress much or at all.
And they haven't, and that goes beyond just the 10 years. It's almost the last 1,000 years.
Yeah.
The culture has not changed hardly at all.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting, his line, this place resists change.
Yes, it's a rigid structure
Yeah.
with boundaries and limitations that are set in stone and that are immovable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So clearly,
you have to break things like
there
that. They're
is
not malleable.
thought that has been put into why this culture has not changed.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll continue to learn more.
Yes.
Oh, I know we will, as we continue to go. So I just wanted to point that out.
That's good.
It's a really
That's good.
missable little quip from Aaron,
Yeah.
but just reinforcing this idea that this world is the way it is, and it's designed to stay that way.
Yeah.
They don't want it to change. So,
There you go.
all right. So after launching on the Shoopuf, Wok is complaining. Or no, he's not complaining. He's pointing out first the ruins of the ancient Machina city.
Yes, because they're looking
the
down.
river.
It looks pretty sweet. It looks cool.
And he sort of shares a story about it. He's talking about how their ancestors had tried to defy the laws of nature, right?
Yes.
By building the city on top of the water, with like bridges or whatever that they had kind of set up, right? And I like how Tidus challenges this. He's like,
Yes.
Are you sure? I'm not sure that that's really the reason.
I like Tidus. I like the fact that Tidus challenges it.
Yes.
I don't agree with Tidus's challenge because Tidus is like, maybe they just really liked the water, or maybe they wanted to be near water.
Or it'd be a convenient way to get...
Yeah. You can have a coastal city.
Sure.
Right? So it's easy to get around. You don't have to build your city on the water, even with what Tidus says. But I like the fact that he challenges it, because Waka has not really been challenged in this way, and the Evon religion in general has not been challenged in this way, at least not very often.
Yeah.
So the fact that even though his in 2 seconds, spur of the moment, well, I don't know, maybe they just like the water and want to be close to it. Like, okay, that's not a good answer, but he's thinking, he's working on it, and he's rejecting what he's being told.
There could
something
be
Waka
other
can't
explanations.
do. Exactly.
Other than
it's just
the
one
official
he thought
one
of
that you've been told.
Yes.
You've been told they did this because of this, but there could be other reasons.
Maybe
I'm
there
not
was
so
something
sure
else.
about that.
Yes.
And this kind of
yes, yeah.
cascades into a bunch of questions about what's so bad about Machina in the first place.
Which is what I
Right?
think what he had asked Yuna a
earlier.
night or two previously. Yeah.
And this is where Lulu explains, well, they
Some
had
are
used
good.
Machina to wage this war. And it was that war that is
Yeah.
the punishment that we're still like suffering the consequences of, and that's why we
Right.
don't use Machina. But he's like, but wait, you use Machina though in your Blitzball Stadium and like all these other ways. What are you talking about?
There's a list of approved machina
yes, and
signed by Yevon Meisters.
yeah, it's like the church gets to decide which Machina we may use and which we may not use.
yes.
And he's like, okay, well, which Machina may we not use then? Like, why?
Which are the forbidden machina.
And of course, Waka's response to that is, remember Operation Mihen?
Those
that
ones.
kind.
The violent ones, the weapons.
The weapons,
Yeah.
the Machina weapons. You can't use Machina
Which
weapons.
many things can become weapons, but yeah.
Sure. So anyways, I just like the scene because, again, Tidus's purpose in this whole thing is to, like, challenge the things that they believe and be like, you know, think about this a different way. And, of course, Waka's not going to have that. He's devout, but, like, he's chipping away at these people over time. Right?
Yeah, little by little.
Yeah.
Just the fact that he's questioning at all is something that Waka does not often have to deal with.
Yeah.
I want to go into more depth on this, but we kind of need to finish the game first.
Yeah.
Because he talks about the past and what happened. Oh, there was war and the Machina were used to wage war. And we don't know everything about that yet. We'll come to know a little bit more, and then maybe I can comment a little bit more on how that parallels with this city.
Yeah.
My notes in general, though, is that the Machina was built on a bridge and the weight of the city caused it to sink. But this is really rich. Like, just this story can be turned into 1,000 mythologies in 100 different ways, into a different, you know, it's too perfect, right? So it's a city that grew too ambitious and too prideful, built above the water on an unstable foundation, and was destroyed by its own weight, sinking into the water. You could say the weight was the size of the city or the immensity of its sins. You could say it was built on a poor foundation, being a bridge, but the city was also founded on Machina, being the foundation, right? There's different, you know, layers to, like, what the foundation of a city can be, and it goes all the way down. You could say they lived like Xanarkans, separate from nature, accomplishing that which was impossible until nature did what nature does, and the city was brought to ruin in the water, which is the flow of time. Just that what do they say? Father Time is undefeated, right? It's inevitable. This will happen. And the river, the flow of a river is like the flow of time, right? So it's a brief story that Lulu tells, but stories like this are metaphorical in nature and always reveal a lot more than just surface level stuff seems to convey. So I'm sure that this city was used as a Sodom and Gomorrah type of example of, like, don't do what they did. See, their city's blown up and look at it. You can see the ruins. Let me tell you how this happened, and who knows if it's accurate or not. Like, this is why it happened. Okay, sure. Like, and there may be more or less levels of truth to what they say, but there's almost always more to the story than this one thing. This is why it happened, right? It could have just been an accident. Although building your city over a river, you're betting on zero accidents. So just the hubris of doing it in the first place, and then even if one accident happens, it's like, well, yeah. I mean, come on, you guys aren't perfect, right? Yeah. But this is a Sodom and Gomorrah story. This is the equivalent to Sodom and Gomorrah in the religion of Yevon, right? Yeah. This is what happens. Yeah. So it also could be a flood narrative, as the waters may have risen to engulf the city in a way they didn't expect, right? But for all we know, in Final Fantasy X, those stories may not be purely fictional. But my point is, it doesn't have to tell the whole truth, right? Yeah. It could be an element here and there. But I still have the question of if a foolish man builds his house on the sand, what does that say about the person who builds their house over a river?
On water.
And if building your house on water isn't so wise, then these people built it in the air above the water. Like, it's not even a floating city. It's in the air. Yeah. Above water. Like, I don't know. I mean, we're levels of the absence of wisdom at this point. So, like,
hubris.
Right? Yes. And in many respects, it's like, okay, you can agree with Waka to an extent, but that doesn't mean that the dogma that he's been taught is 100% true, right? Sure. And that also doesn't mean that Tidus was right in his response either. I just think there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. So this is where the Bhed show up and kidnap Yuma. And drag her underwater.
They just, like, hop up and pull her down super
and so,
fast.
Again, only Tidus and Waka fight in this battle underwater, right? They dive down to save her, just the two of them, because they're the only ones trained to fight underwater, or to hold their breath that long. Did you notice anything about this boss you fight, the machine?
Jeez. I mean, I probably should have, but no.
It's the same machine that you fought on the Bhed ship earlier. And it's
machine?
Bandaged up.
So it was that same machine earlier. Oh my gosh! Because I thought, Tidus was looking around the ship and was like, I don't know if it's the same ship or not. Yeah. And his conclusion was it was not.
Yes.
But it was.
Well, at least this machine that he fought was the same machine.
Was the person in the machine the same person?
I don't know if it was piloted by the same person or not.
That is funny, dude.
But I would think so.
I would think so too. I for some reason, I didn't quite connect that.
Because she's involved in this plan to kidnap the summoners.
Yes.
as an Al Bhed.
That could easily have been her in the previous.
Anyways, this
That's
is something
funny, man.
some people brought up for the last episode we uploaded, which was episode, was it 4 or 5 we uploaded just now?
5.
5.
Yeah, because this will be 7.
There were people commenting on how the reason the Al Bhed kidnapped Yuna was not just about the ransom for the Blitzball game, right? And I was trying to say,
I know, but we're not.
we're not
getting into that
revealing
yet.
things before they get to them.
Yes.
When they're revealed, we'll circle back
Absolutely,
to it and
absolutely.
then fill in the details and analyze
Yes.
it. But we're just not going to spoil it first.
Yes.
So, anyways, the concern there was, but I guess this is just maybe like a, just a first playthrough kind of thing. No, this is a deep analysis. We're just going to get to those points
just analyzing
when
the story
it's revealed,
as it's revealed. Yes.
not before so.
And that's funny how you get to episode 5 and think this is a blind analysis, but whatever. The fact that they've come back again frees us up to at least explore the possibility that this is not about Blitzball. Right?
No.
Clearly, they're kidnapping for a separate reason.
Yes.
And it's not just about Blitzball.
And they've really been hammering that point now a few times along the path. Isaru and the Ronzo, and now that's happening here.
Someone is making
The
summoners
Al
disappear.
Bhed are capturing
Yes.
and kidnapping summoners.
Yes. Why?
We don't know why yet.
We don't know.
But we're leading to this.
It's a blind playthrough. We don't know. We don't know what's going on. We have no. I never played this game before. Have you?
Oh my goodness, dude. Yes, so there is an alternate reason. We just hadn't learned that yet. And we will explain that and do more in-depth analysis on that point when you learn it.
Yes.
It doesn't have to happen, during the Blitzball tournament in Luca. So, anyways, you swim down there, you fight the thing. It's the same Machina thing from earlier. It's kind of funny because they just have like bandages on it and things like that. They just go like
I did
duct
notice that,
taped
but
it together, right?
Oh, I should have made that connection.
It's kind of funny.
That's great.
And she is held in like a little sphere, so she's it's like protecting
Technically
her so
outside
she can
of
breathe.
Yeah.
And anyways, you fight that thing and you rescue her and you go back and Waka's just complaining about the Al Bhed again, just what are they doing,
Not really in his defense though.
Sure.
Like they are kidnapping the most important person in all of Spirit. So it's like, okay, maybe what's wrong with you people, right?
Yeah. He kind of takes it to this level that makes everyone uncomfortable. They're all kind of silent as he's sitting there just continuing to talk about. I think he uses a term. So it's not just that he's mad that they've done what they've done. He says something about those sand rat something or other.
Yes, there's a specific
he has some
slur.
kind of slur for Al Bhed that he uses.
Yeah.
And everyone
I
gets.
think it was Mudblood. I think that was it.
Everybody gets really uncomfortable about that, and this is where Titus notices specifically Yuna really uncomfortable about this.
Yes.
And so he tries to calm him down. And, hey, what's the point of complaining about it now? Like, just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
As long as we're here, we'll do our job. She's going to be fine. Like, and he gets him to kind of shut up about it. And
she
Yuna mouths thank
yes.
you to him, right?
Yeah.
For getting him to stop being racist towards Al Bhed for a moment.
No, but it's weird. But having just been, for all we know, having just been almost killed by somebody, there's obviously other things going on at this point.
Sure.
But it's an interesting situation. It's just really funny. It's like, okay, I don't know. I don't know that it's so.
That he's necessarily completely unjustified in being upset.
Yes, and I don't know that Yuna is the way that she's like, oh, thank you, that was ridiculous. It's like, they almost killed you. You know that, right?
Yes.
But like, I know. But because we meet Rikku like right away. So it's like, okay, Rikku was not trying to kill Yuna. But for all the player knows she was.
Waka knows, specifically.
And for all Waka knows.
Yeah.
But also the player, specifically, the player. It's a strange scene when things haven't been revealed yet.
Yes.
To see Yuna being like, come on, gosh, Waka, can you get him to please shut up about how those people just tried to kill me and how they're so bad people? It feels strange to the player, and I do like that you learn something pretty quickly away.
I think
like, I don't know, there's something
how
weird.
I would explain it is this. Like, he's generalizing every Al Bhed for being this kind of thing. And
And
maybe
we
the
do
thing they're
know
uncomfortable
Yuna-
about is
Yes.
maybe there is some splinter Al Bhed group who's doing this summoning, kidnapping stuff. But to paint the entire Al Bhed like this
Okay, fair enough.
is the uncomfortable part.
Given that it's her father or
her
mother?
uncle,
Her
Sid,
uncle.
yeah.
Yes, but
Right.
was it her father or mother who was
Her
on it?
mother
Her
was
mother.
Al Bhed, yes.
Yeah, because her father was Braska. So her mother is Al Bhed. And so him generalizing is what made her uncomfortable
Yes.
because he was talking about her mother.
Right,
That makes a lot more sense.
yes.
Although she literally just survived being killed and maybe shouldn't be so worried about
Yeah.
how mean he was
I
to the
think-
people who tried to kill her.
I think, at least to the way I read it, was they got uncomfortable when he used the Al Bhed slur.
The slur,
Not so much
specifically.
about the, oh, I can't believe these people, they just tried to kidnap Yuna. That part of
Yeah.
it, I feel like they were more or less understanding about. It's when
Right.
he used that, I can't remember what he said, something about sand rats, something or other.
Yes, yeah.
That they all shut up.
They were like, all
And
right,
they were
dude. Stop it.
yeah, right.
Fair enough. That makes sense. That helps it fit in my mind a little bit better. Real quick. There was one more thing I had to say about the city that was built over the river.
Yes.
That's a great story. Like, that really would make a good Bible story.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it really would.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and forgive my pro-Yevon musings for a moment here, but I believe somebody says, and possibly Lulu, because we ask, what'll happen if you guys use Machina again? Like, what's the big deal? And the answer is that war will rage again if they
Yes,
use
right.
Machina. That's technically correct.
Yes.
So the machines were about to destroy the world.
Yes.
And when it comes to Japanese telling stories about technology destroying the world, understand that nuclear bombs are a big part of the
development.
Japanese history and what they mean when they talk about this kind of stuff. Like, a lot of times the nuclear bomb is so present in their culture and in their minds that when they're talking about Machina being used to destroy the world, like, nuclear bombs, right?
We're going to be talking about Nausicaa right after this.
Once again. Oh, on Patreon.
Yeah,
Subscribe on Patreon if you want to hear our thoughts on Nausicaa Valley of the Wind. But war will rage again, and it will destroy the world if they use Machina again.
Yeah.
It's like a catch-22. They're in this rigid world where they're under the authoritarian thumb of a theocracy. But at the same time, if they try to use machines to overcome their current situation, it will escalate to the point where nuclear bombs will start annihilating everyone again, like all over again. Like, it's likely correct that would happen, given that it was previously about to happen, it seems, right? So they're technically right about
At least
I
in the
just wanted
version,
to kind of throw that out there. Like, there's some nuance here.
at least in the version of history they've been told.
Yes.
So you get off on the other side.
Yeah.
And
And we're off the Shoopuf now, right?
off the Shoopuf, you're kind of traveling towards Guadosalam.
Yeah.
And you meet Rikku along the way. She's just laying there on the freaking shore.
And somehow we saw her before anyone else.
yeah, Titus is kind of in the lead, I guess.
She's in her Al Bhed getup.
I love how his first thing he says to her, lying there on the ground, "You're not dead." It's just really funny.
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, "No thanks to
I
you,"
love
kind of a
Titus.
thing, right?
Yes. And it's like,
And he's
you
like,
tried to kill me. He's
What
like,
are you talking about? I didn't try to
do
kill
anything.
you. And she reveals she was piloting the machina that they fought that had kidnapped Yuna.
it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah, it's like, oh, you attacked us, right? I think.
And she goes, oh.
And then she says, it wasn't what he thought. It's not what you think.
Yeah,
We weren't trying to harm her.
Yes,
right?
that's what she says. Because
Yeah.
he's like, you were trying to kill her. They're like, no, we weren't. It's all a misunderstanding. Which is like, who would believe that? But everyone believes it. So anyway.
Yeah. So at that moment, I mean, Titus is kind of caught between a rock and a hard place because it's
their people are coming.
I like you.
Yes.
You were my friend who helped me.
Yes.
But you just told me you tried to kidnap Yuna. And all of these people, if they hear that,
they're guardians of Yuna.
So, like, what do I do?
Yes.
Right? So he's kind of flustered.
Well, she takes off her outfit.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess puts it far away to where no one sees it because it's Al Bhed insignia.
It would look like Al Bhed.
Yeah.
Get up. Yeah.
And
she does kind of have her goggles like draping on like around her neck, which is kind of funny. But.
There are a ton of questions, but at the same time, they are addressed, which makes me wonder. I can't remember exactly where they go with this, But Tidus does say, he points out, he goes, I don't know why Waka didn't realize
He couldn't tell
she
that
was an
Rikku
Albed.
was an Albed.
And because that's what I was saying. I was like, how does Waka not know? If you're racist, you like know the thing.
Yeah.
It's not just you can't be racist against an abstract principle. You're racist against phenotypes, like specific things that are manifest physical things. But he doesn't know an Albed when he sees one.
He doesn't know one.
And so, it's confusing, but Tidus does bring it up. Tidus says, I didn't understand why Waka didn't realize that she was an Albed.
Yeah. So there's a couple things
I'm getting
to this.
ahead of myself here.
A couple things to this. Because, Tidus explains right away, oh, this is Rikku, and
She helped me.
well, first he's like, she's an Albed! He like almost blurts it out.
Yeah.
She's an Albed.
And then catches himself.
How Waka does not pick up on this is beyond me.
It's like almost the first thing he says. She's an Albed! Fetch! It was really funny.
Oh, I love that. That is great. That is so funny.
But Waka, and then he goes on to say, "Oh, she saved me, and like before I met you, she was the one who rescued me." And his response to her after hearing that is incredibly telling. Like he says, "Wow, so you owe her your life? What luck meeting you here, yeah?
Yeah.
Praise be to Yevon," and he does the whole thing.
Of course.
So Rikku, you look a little beat up. Are you okay? He's like all concerned. Yeah. He doesn't realize she's
all
Albed.
the signs are
there. So the way he's treating her is like his normal, happy-go-lucky Waka self, not his racist Waka self.
Yes.
So,
but is he really racist though? He doesn't know what an Albed even is.
Well, here's the thing, and I guess we kind of touched on this earlier. as I was trying to figure out what's the difference physiologically between an Albed and the other people that makes them a different race.
Something about eye color.
It's not just eye color. Did you notice? Because when the girls pull Rikku aside to talk, right?
And she does her thing, her weird,
Yuna
Oh,
asks Auron whether or not Rikku can be a guardian.
Yes, she wants her to come.
And notice what Rikku is doing. She's not making eye contact with him. She's turning. She's kind of turning her eyes away from Auron.
And Auron specifically says,
"Look at me." And Auron says, "Look at me."
Yeah.
And then you see her eye. The eye isn't just green. There's a spiral, little symbol or formation in her eye.
I never saw that.
Let me pull up the scene so you can see.
Does she never look at Waka, ever?
Well, I don't know if he knows because Albed are always wearing goggles. I don't know if he knows that is like a.
So he's racist against goggle-wearing
yes,
individuals, not
that's
necessarily
what he thinks Albed are.
I mean, fair enough. That's a good answer, actually.
Right?
That's a good response.
Okay, hold on. Final Fantasy.
So he's never actually seen an Albed before. He just
their
sees the goggle
eyes
people.
or their face.
Those goggle people.
So he just looks at them like, I don't know, sand people or something.
Right. So you could probably imagine
the costume is almost like what.
Yeah.
Right.
You could almost imagine what he is imagining is behind those goggles. Like the horrible monstrosity that the Albed are hiding behind their suits and goggles that he is imagining isn't just a person like him.
Yes. Right. So, okay, here it is.
But my point still is that he doesn't know.
It's funny to me that she has goggles draped around her neck and he doesn't recognize that.
Those are Albed goggles.
The most telling thing about Albed
is the goggles.
The costume of Albed is the goggles. And she's got goggles around her neck. She also seems to have a gun holster on her freaking leg. But anyway, so I think that's indicative of Albed physiology, but also you're in a world called Spira, right?
So the spiral is reflected in her eye. There's probably
something to that.
Something to that. I have to think about that a little. But how come other people know about what the Albed look like behind their
Waka
goggles?
Doesn't know that.
Except for the one who is
the most racist,
the most upset with them, and probably has researched all about their hideous blasphemies and heresies because they killed his brother.
My thought
or not. I mean, I'm just guessing.
My thought on that is sometimes the reason behind why you hate something is
it's not logical,
so shallow,
it's not rational,
or so that it's just the idea of the thing,
right? As opposed to the thing itself. Yeah.
And so he probably honestly hasn't like spent a lot of time studying about Al Bhed culture.
I mean, I
Right, 'cause-
doubt there are books on that.
Because it's the fear of a thing
Right. So
that
then you
makes you
avoid it.
hate it, right?
Right.
But like when you actually ingratiate yourself and learn more about it,
Then you
it
become reasonable.
dispels
Yeah.
the illusion and like right. It's the thing you don't
Yes.
know that you fear.
Yes,
The
yes,
more
yes.
you learn about it, the less you would fear it.
So maybe he's doing this on purpose. He's purposefully keeping his distance
Yeah.
from knowing anything about them so that he can hate them with his full
Yeah,
spirit.
and that could be a subconscious exercise. Even,
Sure,
but,
I wouldn't say he's doing it on purpose.
but I think it's likely that Waka hasn't learned anything about the Al Bhed,
Okay.
which leads to why he's so fearful of them
Okay,
and why he hates them.
fair enough, fair enough. I like that.
So to me, that can help make sense of how he might not know this thing that Auron would know, and that he's not paying that much attention to it. He just assumes you're not an Al Bhed because I don't see the costume on you, therefore I like you, and he just doesn't think
You
that
know,
hard
I mean,
about it.
he's not like the deepest thinker.
Yes.
He's just kind of a go with the flow kind of guy. So, all right.
Which is, anyway. Okay, so this is kind of the end of where we said we're going to play to this week.
I said, I wrote down, I don't think the word racism is quite right. He's prejudicial, that's for sure, but he's more of an anti-Bedite. It's more like anti-Beditism than actual racism.
true
But
racism.
you're right that there is maybe something technical about the phenotypes and the physiology that
Make them a different
make
race.
it a race technically. I don't know.
Yeah. I like how when they announced that Riku's going to be the new Guardian, that Waka says, well, I'm all for it. The more the merrier.
Hey, right.
And that's where Titus says it was strange. Even though Waka had always hated the Al Bhed, he never realized Rikku was one of them, right? So, really good stuff. And that's going to kind of continue to build as we keep going on. There's a lot more to get to with that. But that's
Yeah.
where we decided to stop for this week. So
Yep.
let's just
Guadosalam next.
Let's just respond to maybe a couple comments and then do a very short spoiler discussion because there was just,
Okay.
I think, just two things we had touched on
Yes.
that
Okay,
we
sounds
want to
good.
explain a little bit more of. So let me pull up some comments from, this would have been episode 5 comments we're responding to here. There were a couple that you already brought up. Were there any that you
Yeah.
saw that you really liked?
Oh, yeah, there were a bunch, but it would take me a minute. First off, somebody mentioned we missed a cutscene in episode 5.
Go back and look at Dude McGuy's comment on episode 5 because there is an optional scene that we miss that he talks about there, and he has a link to it in his comment, so you can go watch that if you missed it. And you can kind of read what some people are saying there. So we'll maybe circle back to this later. But yeah, that was a good comment. It's one of the highest rated comments on so it should be pretty high up in terms of its order.
Yeah.
So yeah, go look for that one. Sindanez Duskwind is talking about how the hooded child appears in some of the other flashbacks from earlier. In particular, the scene where Titus's mom is telling him, "Oh, why do you hate your dad so much? You know, if he dies, then you'll never have a chance to tell him that." You know, that little thing. The hooded boy is also there in the background. So he's always there, it seems.
Yes, he's been there for
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah, so that was an interesting thing to point out. Oh, we got this a couple times, so I'll bring this up. Talking about the we're not taking chances thing.
Okay.
Well, okay, so what the other person had said, but there were many people who brought this particular point up, was that they're not taking chances that the Al Bhed will actually keep their word. That they'll actually give Yuna back, especially in light of what we know that the
That's
Al
what I was
Bhed are
saying,
doing when
their
kidnapping. Yes.
intentions, yeah.
Yes. So we're not going to take any chances that they will actually give Yuna back to us if we lose the game.
That makes sense in light of
Yeah.
things you've learned later.
Yes.
It's less apparent right at that point in the game. Yeah.
I guess if they had introduced the idea, oh, summoners are disappearing, be careful, before that scene, like they could have put that together. Maybe they're the ones, I don't know. Jeremy Mac 18. Lulu says if they're only blitzball players, I doubt they do anything drastic, but we shouldn't take our chances. Let's go get her. So
Gotcha.
contextually, it makes sense to take the chance, to not take the chance of underestimating how far the Sykes are willing to go. Anyway, actually, that actually wasn't the one.
That makes sense. So it's
anyways, there was just a bunch of people who brought that up.
Cool.
Okay,
Good
we
to
got to
know.
move into spoilers now because it's just impossible to read comments without spoilers. Everyone likes to spoil this game in the comments. So, I will put where to play up to next time in the pinned comment, so look there for that.
Okay.
See you guys next week, and now to spoiler section.
Peace out, spoilers.
There were two things we brought up in the body of the podcast I wanted to touch on. One was
at the temple, right?
At the temple of Djose.
Djose Temple. The symbol of the Fireflies is there, and you guys can find it in the Bhed Temple. And it looks like this root structure. These roots and these sort of thorny, but slightly jagged, but also a little bit curvy roots that produce this special thing called electricity. And it comes from the Fireflies, right?
Yes.
And the Fireflies are what power the world, right? And it comes from the roots that turn the Fireflies to electricity. It's this root system that kind of does it, right? That creates the electricity from the Fireflies. But Fireflies are used as energy, and that is the far plane, right? So if we're in spoilers, I guess I can just come out and say it.
Yeah.
But looking at the design of Seymour's long flowing robe in the back, you see the jaggedness and the curves and the look of the root system that is associated with Fireflies in the far plane, right?
And the Guadosalam is where the far plane is at.
And Guadosalam, which has those same roots growing all over, right? It's that tree symbol. But the other Guado tend not to actually have that on them. It's just Seymour. And the other character who has that, other than Titus and Jecht, have something that looks like it with the J, with the symbol, you know? But they've got a special thing going on in terms of whether they really exist or not.
Yeah.
But, so it's still related, but it's not the same. The other character who has that symbol on them is Aran.
Yes.
On Aran's shoulder, he's got that root,
those are the two
Firefly symbol.
Characters who are actually fiends.
So, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but they do give you this hint. If you can connect the roots from the far plane with the Fireflies that provide the electricity and power, and realize that that symbol for the Fireflies, which represent the far plane, is on two specific characters that happen to be revealed later on to be dead people, to be fiends coming from the far plane to rule or to do whatever they want to do, I guess.
Yeah, they weren't ready to pass yet.
No, but they have that symbol on them. And that was so intentionally put there by the artist. And it's really cool because it's an eerie similarity that Aran and Seymour have together with each other. That's like they don't want to have anything to do with each other other than that.
This brings up a question for me. When Yuna's doing all of her sending, why is Aran not sent?
So Aran isn't present when she does, because I actually already finished the game with my wife.
Yeah.
So I've done that, and I'm going back now, and I'm
So he wasn't in the party at Kilika.
He was not there
for that sending.
For Kilika.
But she's doing sending on the beach in Mihen.
He is standing at a safe distance. Anytime she does a sending, it's actually pretty clear he
like
is
really
purposefully getting away from that. Because
do you see,
there's a point later where she tries to send Seymour, and Aran is like, peace out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they make a point to make sure Aran is
Yes, they make a point
at a
to
safe
ensure
enough distance
that
he won't
Aran
get
is
sent.
not anywhere near there, right?
Yeah.
Aran is quite separate from wherever she does her sendings. That was an interesting touch. But yeah, I like that symbol's there. I like even more that symbol is present at the Bhed mandala, which I will get into later because it's at two places in the Bhed mandala, and it's very meaningful there. It's very cool.
This guy, James Bevan, is talking a little bit about why he thinks Lulu is so disrespectful to Waka publicly but not privately, right?
Yeah.
He says, she loves Waka but doesn't want to admit it to anyone or even herself because it may look disrespectful to Chapu's memory. So he thinks that maybe she has some feelings towards Waka, and she doesn't like that fact, right? By putting Waka down in front of everyone and praising Chapu, she's reinforcing that denial, if that makes any sense. I've seen it firsthand in real life, so that's how I looked at it anyways.
Interesting.
It could be. I can't remember if in Final Fantasy X-2 anything ends up developing. I almost forgot everything about the freaking story of X-2.
I only know this due to the comments section, but yeah, her and Waka are together in Final Fantasy X-2.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh,
according to a comment that I read. I have not played X-2.
Oh, that was what I was wondering, because I wanted to say that, but then I started checking myself, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay, yeah, so that's a good way to look at it. She's developing feelings for Waka, or has, and she feels guilty because that's Chapu's brother. It's kind of an awkward thing.
Yeah.
Makes total sense that she would try to do that to reinforce it to herself.
Totally.
This one comes from Sean. He says, commenting again because I just finished the video. Great podcast as always, guys. To touch on the parallels of Yuna and Titus again, like I mentioned in episode 3 of the podcast, I'll try to stay away from spoilers in this. But the journey that Titus and Yuna go on together is so interesting because of the whole point of the pilgrimage and the end goal of it. What Yuna goes through at the price she ultimately is willing to pay to give Spira's people happiness even for a short while is exactly the price Titus pays to achieve that ultimate goal. Again, no spoilers, but for those who know, you know what I'm talking about. Yuna being reborn as a summoner parallels Titus' rebirth into Spira. And what's crazy is that whole parallel. Titus playing the fool in a fool's journey while Yuna plays the hero. Ultimately,
Yes.
they are two sides of the same coin, much like the whole sun and moon motif. There are so many parallels between Titus and Yuna, it's no wonder why they end up together. And I would love to hear you talk about them at the end of the podcast when everything is out in the open.
I like that. There was that was mentioned that as soon as Yuna was becoming a summoner is when Titus was brought to Spira, right? Mm-hmm. And they both kind of had their moment where they, came back into a world reborn as a new thing together at the same time, without knowing it.
Yeah. One thing that I think is interesting on that point about her perspective is because she knows she's going to die, she could almost want a romantic connection because it's like the last chance she'll have at this.
Interesting.
It's another reason why I think Lulu might have been okay with allowing Titus to come on if she knows that Yuna likes Titus, because it's for her sake to have a budding romance before
Fair
her
enough.
death.
Yeah, I like that.
Gosh, there's so many comments, man. I wish I could get to them, guys. I really do. I'm just sitting there scrolling down. It's just more and more and more. And we have so many people who are really thoughtful. They're leaving these really thoughtful comments. And I wish we could make more time to respond to more of them. I'm still doing it. I'm still scrolling down. There's still more. It's just crazy.
Well, I freaking love how engaged people are with this. And, I was active, at least on the first day the podcast went up. I was responding to comments and I read them all. I'm going to go back and read them all again because I love how there's a lot of really creative people in the comments and a lot of really good ideas. And every now and then there's something that we missed. And so I really value the comments that you guys are putting in there. They're really good.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I just saw one that I hadn't seen yet from Howling Sphinx. Mike, the Roman Empire hasn't been around for a long time. He's trying to connect the how Donna went really, really quickly into the next sentence, right? So you believe the Roman Empire hasn't been along for a while. Case and we're leaving. You believe which one? Case and we're leaving.
I love that.
It's funny stuff.
Oh, that's great.
Anyways, it's just endless. There's just so many. So many comments. And we really appreciate them. So,
we do. It's awesome. And we read them all. We just can't call attention to them in the episode.
Every time. Okay,
not all of
them.
them.
The bottom.
A couple of them. Take a jump. Now open all the replies. Click show more.
By the time that we would have gotten to the end, not responding to any along the way, it would have just been, it would have felt like so many people didn't get a chance to say what they want to say. So we're trying our best is what I'm trying to do.
We are.
We got to talk about Nazca now.
We do.
Peace out.
Subscribe on Patreon if you want to see it.
If you want to see it. Peace out. See ya.